Where am I? What's going on? What are they doing to them?
They change you to accommodate you. That's not life, it's transformation. Run! If they find us, you won't survive.
Will you come with me?
No, they won't let me leave. You have to go yourself. But remember, they will find you one day.
The first thing she noticed was the cold. It seeped into her skin like ice, a chill so deep it felt as if her bones were freezing. Her senses were dulled, submerged in a fog that refused to clear. The faint hum of machinery vibrated through her body, rhythmic and alien, like a pulse that didn't belong to her. She tried to move, but her limbs were bound, her wrists and ankles held fast by something unyielding. Panic began to well up, sharp and electric. Her eyelids fluttered, struggling against their unnatural weight. When they finally opened, she was met with a light so bright and sterile it felt as though it was cutting into her retinas. The room swam into focus, and the sight above her stole what little breath she had left. A figure loomed, tall, impossibly thin, its pale, translucent skin glistening under the harsh glow of the overhead light. Its head was elongated, and its face lacked the familiar contours of humanity. No nose, just two slits. No mouth, only a faint ridge where one might have been. But its eyes were the most unnerving. They were large, black, and impossibly deep, like twin voids that seemed to see through her, peeling back layers of her mind. She thrashed instinctively, her muscles straining against the bindings. They weren't metal or leather, but something else entirely. Smooth, organic, and faintly pulsing against her skin as though alive. The creature tilted its head, observing her movements with an unsettling calm. One of its four arms moved toward her, long and spindly, tipped with a claw-like appendage. In its grasp was a tool that resembled a scalpel, though its blade shimmered with an iridescent blue glow. "Don't," she croaked, her voice barely audible, raw and trembling. Her throat burned as though she hadn't spoken in days. "Please, don't." The creature stopped, its head cocked to the side again, as though considering her words. Then it spoke, not with a voice, but with something deeper, a resonance that vibrated inside her skull. "I will not harm you." The words were calm but foreign, their cadence strange. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest as adrenaline warred with confusion. It hadn't attacked her. It hadn't even restrained her further. If anything, it seemed almost curious. The scalpel-like tool was lowered, and the creature extended one of its other hands toward a glowing console at its side. A series of clicks and hums filled the air, and the bindings around her wrists and ankles released with a wet, sucking sound. She scrambled upright, her limbs shaking. The operating table she had been lying on was slick with a faint, viscous substance, and the air smelled faintly of chemicals and something organic. She pressed her back against the nearest wall, keeping her eyes locked on the alien figure. What is this place?" she managed to whisper. "What are you?" The alien didn't answer immediately. Instead, it turned away from her, its elongated fingers dancing across the glowing console. Symbols and diagrams she couldn't understand flickered across the walls, projected from some unseen source. Images of human anatomy appeared, overlaid with alien script and strange geometric patterns. Her stomach turned at the sight of one particular image. A human body split open, its organs replaced with alien tissue, veins threaded with faintly glowing filaments. "This is a containment facility," the alien finally said, its voice echoing inside her head. "For experiments." Her blood ran cold. "Experiments? They are altering your kind," it continued, almost matter-of-factly. "Studying your biology, preparing it for integration." "Integration?" she repeated, her voice rising. "Into what?" The alien turned to face her again. Its black eyes bore into hers, unreadable. "You do not want the answer." She swallowed hard, her mind racing. "Then why am I here? Why are you doing this to me?" "I am not the one doing this," it replied. "I found you before they could begin. You were next." The room seemed to tilt, the implications of its words slamming into her like a freight train. She felt the urge to run, to scream, but there was nowhere to go. The walls were seamless, the ceiling too high to reach. She was trapped. "What do you mean, next? What were they going to do to me?" Her voice was shaking now, the panic she'd been holding back threatening to boil over. The alien didn't answer. Instead, it stepped to the side, revealing something she hadn't noticed before. A window, or at least something resembling one. It flicked its wrist and the surface shimmered, revealing the corridor beyond. What she saw made her legs go weak. Rows upon rows of pods lined the walls, each one glowing faintly with a sickly green light. Inside each pod was a person, or what used to be a person. Some were clearly dead, their faces slack, their bodies unmoving. Others twitched and writhed, their forms grotesquely altered. Limbs had been stretched to impossible lengths, skin peeled back to reveal alien tissue growing beneath. One man's chest had been split open, his ribs fused into a cage-like structure that pulsed with faint blue light. The sound of muffled screams filled the air, faint but unmistakable. Her stomach churned and she staggered back, pressing her hand against her mouth to keep from vomiting. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is this? What are they doing?" "They are trying to make you like them," the alien said. Its tone was calm, almost clinical, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Regret, maybe. But not all survive. "Why are you telling me this?" she demanded. "Why are you helping me?" It stepped closer, its movements unnervingly smooth. "Because I was like them once, a subject, but I escaped before they could finish." Her eyes widened. "You mean you're—" "I am something else now," it said, cutting her off. "And I have been waiting for an opportunity to stop them. That opportunity is you." The words hung heavy in the air. She stared at the alien, her mind a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and disbelief. She didn't know if she could trust it. She didn't even know if she had a choice. But as the faint sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor beyond, drawing closer, she realized one thing. Whatever was coming for her, it was far worse than the creature standing before her now. The alien moved with a fluid grace, gesturing for her to follow. She hesitated, her legs trembling beneath her, but the faint sound of footsteps, growing louder and closer, pushed her forward. The walls of the room rippled like liquid as the alien pressed its hand to a panel. A seamless door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor that stretched into an eerie green glow. The air was thick with an acrid, metallic smell that made her stomach churn. "Stay close," the alien said, its voice resonating inside her head again. "They will notice soon." She didn't ask who they were. She didn't want to know. Instead, she stumbled after it, her bare feet slapping against the cold, slick floor. The corridor was silent except for the faint hum of machinery and the occasional drip of a viscous fluid from unseen pipes above. The walls were smooth and seamless, their surfaces faintly pulsing like the veins of some enormous living organism. They turned a corner and she froze. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes fell on a row of clear containment chambers lining the walls. Each one was filled with a glowing green liquid that cast unsettling shadows on the floor. But it wasn't the light that made her heart stop. It was what was inside. The first chamber held what used to be a woman. Her body was grotesquely altered, her limbs elongated and twisted at unnatural angles. Her skin was translucent, revealing alien musculature that seemed to shift and writhe as though alive. The woman's face was frozen in a silent scream, her lips stretched impossibly wide, her teeth jagged and blackened. Tubes protruded from her chest and abdomen, pumping the green liquid into her veins. She twitched occasionally, her eyes rolling in their sockets, but there was no sign of recognition or humanity left. "Oh my God," she whispered, backing away. What is this?" "Do not linger," the alien urged, its voice sharper now. "They are not dead. Not yet." She forced herself to look away, but the horrors continued. Each chamber revealed a new nightmare, a man whose torso had been fused with metallic plating that pulsed like a second heart, a child with black, insect-like appendages growing from its back, curling and uncurling as if testing their strength, a figure that could no longer be identified as human, its form reduced to a writhing mass of tendrils and eyes that blinked independently. "Why are they doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "To adapt your species," the alien replied, its tone cold and detached. "To make you usable." "Usable for what?" she demanded, but the alien didn't answer. It simply pressed forward, its movements quick and deliberate. She had no choice but to follow, though every step felt heavier than the last. They passed chamber after chamber, each more horrifying than the last, until they reached a large open space. The room was dimly lit, with rows of operating tables stretching into the distance. Most of them were occupied. Some figures lay still, their bodies in various stages of transformation. Others writhed and screamed, their cries muffled by strange organic devices clamped over their faces. The air was thick with the smell of blood, chemicals, and something else, something fetid and unnatural. She stopped in her tracks, bile rising in her throat. I can't do this." "You must," the alien said, turning to face her. Its large black eyes glimmered with something that might have been pity. "This is what awaits you if we fail." Her knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to move. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to look too closely at the tables as they passed. But one caught her attention despite herself. A woman lay strapped to the table, her chest cavity wide open. Strange, alien organs pulsed inside, glowing faintly with an unnatural light. The woman's eyes darted frantically, her face contorted in agony, but no sound escaped her lips. Her gaze locked with the protagonist's for a brief, terrible moment before the alien pulled her forward. "We are running out of time," it said. "They will come soon." "Why are you helping me?" she asked again, her voice breaking. "Why me?" "You were chosen," it replied, its tone clipped. "They consider you viable, but I saw something else, a possibility." "A possibility for what?" The alien stopped abruptly, placing a hand against another panel. The wall slid open, revealing a small, dark chamber. It ushered her inside, the door hissing shut behind them. The room was cramped, with walls lined by screens and alien consoles. A single large display dominated one wall, filled with incomprehensible diagrams and data. "They are not infallible," the alien said, its voice calmer now. "There is a way out, but it will not be easy." "What kind of way out?" she asked, her eyes darting to the screen. It displayed what looked like a map of the facility, though the layout was incomprehensible to her. Pulsing red dots moved across the screen, converging toward their location. "The central chamber," the alien said, pointing to a glowing node on the map. "It contains a device, a portal. It is how they bring in new subjects and discard the failures. If we reach it, I can send you back." "Back where?" she asked, her voice rising. "Back to Earth? Back to where this all started. It is your only chance," the alien said, ignoring her protests. "But we must move now." The door opened again, and the sound of footsteps, no longer distant, filled the air. Shadows danced in the corridor, moving closer with each passing second. The alien stepped forward, its body tense. "Stay behind me," it said, its voice steady. "And do not stop, no matter what you see." She wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but the approaching shadows gave her no choice. Taking a deep breath, she followed the alien into the dark corridor, the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out the distant screams. The corridor stretched endlessly, the faint green glow pulsing along the walls like a heartbeat. The alien moved ahead of her, its long, spindly limbs gliding silently across the slick floor. She tried to match its pace, but her bare feet slipped against the cold, organic surface. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Footsteps, but not entirely human. Some were heavy and uneven, as if the creatures dragging themselves toward them were malformed, struggling against the constraints of their twisted bodies. Others scuttled, claws or limbs clicking against the floor with an unnatural rhythm. "Faster," the alien urged, its voice sharp in her head. "I'm trying," she gasped, her chest heaving. Every breath burned, the acrid air searing her lungs. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall. The surface was warm, almost fleshy, and she recoiled instinctively. It felt alive. The alien stopped abruptly, turning to face her. Its black, featureless eyes bored into hers, its expression unreadable. "Do not stop. If they catch us..." A piercing screech cut through the air, echoing off the walls. She flinched, her heart pounding. The sound was close now, impossibly close. A shadow flickered at the edge of the dim corridor, something crawling along the ceiling. She couldn't make out its shape, but the way it moved, jagged, unnatural, as though its joints bent in ways they shouldn't, sent a wave of nausea through her. The alien stepped forward, raising one of its 4 arms. A crackling beam of energy shot from its palm, striking the shadowed creature. The hallway lit up briefly, revealing a horrifying glimpse of the thing. Its body was partially human, but grotesquely altered. Its torso elongated, its spine arched unnaturally high. Clawed appendages jutted from its sides, twitching as it shrieked and convulsed under the alien's attack. "Move!" the alien shouted, its voice more urgent now. She didn't need to be told twice. Adrenaline propelled her forward, her feet slapping against the floor as she followed the alien deeper into the facility. The hallway twisted and branched unpredictably, like a maze designed to confuse and disorient. Every turn brought new horrors, a guttural growl from behind a sealed door, a brief glimpse of something writhing in a containment chamber. The air grew colder, and the green glow of the walls dimmed, replaced by a faint, flickering red light. "What is this place?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "How is it alive?" "It is not alive," the alien replied, its voice calm despite the chaos. "It is them. The facility is connected. Everything here serves their purpose." "And what purpose is that?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. "Perfection," the alien said simply, as though the word itself carried its own weight. "Their version of it." She stumbled over something on the floor, a discarded limb, human but partially encased in a layer of translucent alien flesh. The fingers twitched faintly, as though the severed arm were still alive. Bile rose in her throat, but she pushed forward, refusing to look back. Another screech erupted behind them, closer this time. She glanced over her shoulder and immediately regretted it. A group of creatures was closing in, their forms a patchwork of human and alien biology. One had multiple eyes sprouting from its head, each blinking independently. Another dragged itself forward on elongated arms, its legs fused into a single writhing mass. Their mouths gaped unnaturally wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The alien stopped abruptly, raising both arms this time. A surge of energy rippled through the corridor, slamming into the creatures and throwing them back. One hit the wall with a sickening crunch, its body crumpling like paper. Another screamed, its voice a high-pitched wail as its flesh began to bubble and melt. But more were coming, their grotesque silhouettes emerging from the shadows. "This way," the alien said, grabbing her arm and pulling her down a narrow passageway. The walls here were different, darker, more organic. She could feel the faint vibrations beneath her fingertips, as though something massive and unseen was moving just beyond the surface. "Where are we going?" she asked, struggling to keep up. Her legs felt like lead, every step an effort. "The central chamber," the alien replied. "It is our only chance." They emerged into a large open space. The room was circular, the walls lined with massive pulsating structures that resembled veins or arteries. At the center was a raised platform surrounded by a tangle of cables and machinery. Above it, suspended in midair, was a swirling mass of energy, a portal, shimmering and unstable. "That's it?" she asked, her voice rising with disbelief. "That's our way out?" "Yes," the alien said, stepping toward the platform. "But it will not be unguarded." As if on cue, a deep, guttural roar filled the chamber. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and she turned to see a massive figure emerging from one of the darkened corridors. It was unlike anything she had seen before, a monstrous amalgamation of human and alien features. Its body was a grotesque patchwork of flesh and chitin, its limbs thick and muscular. Multiple eyes dotted its misshapen head, each glowing with a malevolent intelligence. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and let out a deafening roar. "Go to the platform," the alien commanded, stepping between her and the creature. "What about you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I will hold it off," the alien said, its tone resolute. "No, I can't. Go!" it shouted, its voice echoing inside her skull. The creature lunged, its massive form barreling toward them. The alien raised all four of its arms, unleashing a surge of energy that struck the creature square in the chest. It staggered but didn't stop, its movements fueled by an unnatural strength. She hesitated, torn between running and staying, but the alien turned to her, its black eyes locking onto hers. "You are the only one who can make it. Do not waste this chance." With tears streaming down her face, she turned and ran toward the platform. The air around it crackled with energy, the portal shimmering like liquid light. As she stepped onto the platform, she heard the alien cry out, a sound that was more than pain, something deeper, more final. The last thing she saw before the portal engulfed her was the creature looming over the alien, its massive jaws closing around one of its arms. Then everything dissolved into light. Blinding light consumed her, searing through her closed eyelids. For a moment there was nothing but silence and weightlessness, as if she were suspended in the void of space. Then the world returned all at once. Gravity slammed her to the ground, and the roar of the portal vanished, leaving an eerie, oppressive stillness in its wake. She lay there, trembling, her hands clawing at the dirt beneath her. It wasn't cold, metallic flooring. It was soil, real, rough, and gritty. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, her chest heaving as she pushed herself upright. She was in the desert. The night stretched out above her, a sky full of stars glittering like shards of broken glass. The air was dry, biting at her skin, and the faint outline of distant mountains loomed against the horizon. She was alive. A sob tore from her throat, half relief, half disbelief. Her body ached, her mind reeling from the horrors she had just escaped. But there was no time to process it, no time to feel safe. She spun around, searching for any sign of the portal, of the alien, but the space behind her was empty. The faint shimmer of the portal had collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but silence. He was gone. Her knees gave out and she sank to the ground, tears streaming down her face. The image of the alien, its unflinching determination, its final desperate stand against the monstrosity, was burned into her mind. She had left it behind. She had left it to die. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." The stillness around her felt wrong, as if the desert itself were holding its breath. The air was heavy, oppressive, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't truly alone. Every shadow seemed to shift. Every whisper of wind sounded like something moving just out of sight. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her breathing. The alien had gotten her this far. It had sacrificed itself so she could escape. She owed it her life, but that didn't mean she was safe. A faint rustling sound broke the silence coming from somewhere behind her. She froze, her blood running cold. Slowly she turned her head, her eyes scanning the darkness. At first she saw nothing, just the endless expanse of desert, the occasional jagged rock rising like a skeletal hand from the ground. Then she saw it, a shadow. It was faint, barely visible against the starlit sand, but it was there, moving, stalking. Her heart began to race as the shadow grew larger, its shape elongating unnaturally as it drew closer. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. She scrambled to her feet, stumbling backward. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. The shadow moved faster now, gliding across the ground with an unnatural grace. As it neared, she caught a glimpse of it, an elongated figure, its body twisted and wrong. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and its eyes glimmered faintly in the dark. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, no, no." It was one of them, one of the creatures. Somehow it had followed her. She turned and ran, her bare feet pounding against the rough terrain. The desert was vast and open, offering no shelter, no cover. She could hear the creature behind her, its movements silent but unrelenting. Every instinct told her it was getting closer, that it would reach her before she could get far enough away. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed in protest, but she forced herself to keep going. She didn't know where she was running to. There was no sign of civilization, no landmarks to guide her. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not ever. Then she saw it. In the distance, a faint glimmer of light. It was small, flickering, but unmistakable. A building. Adrenaline surged through her, and she pushed herself harder, her focus narrowing to that one point of hope. As she got closer, she could make out more details. A low, squat structure, its exterior weathered and cracked. A single floodlight flickered above a metal door, illuminating a faded sign that read, "Restricted Area. No trespassing." It wasn't a safe haven. It was another part of the facility. She hesitated, her mind racing. Was this a trap? A dead end? But before she could decide, the creature let out a piercing shriek behind her. The sound was high-pitched and inhuman, a sound that cut through her very soul. She didn't have a choice. She sprinted toward the door, slamming her fist against it. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "Please, someone help me!" There was no answer. The door didn't move. Panic clawed at her chest as she looked around, her hands scrambling over the doorframe. A keypad was mounted to the side, its screen faintly glowing. Without thinking, she slammed her hand against it. The screen beeped in protest, displaying the words, "Access denied." "No, no, no!" she cried, pounding on the door again. The creature was almost on her now. She could feel it, its presence pressing down on her like a suffocating weight. Then, just as all hope seemed lost, the door hissed open. She stumbled inside, collapsing onto the cold, metallic floor as the door slid shut behind her. The faint hum of machinery filled the air, and she realized she was back inside another part of the facility. But it was quiet, empty. She dragged herself to her feet, her body trembling. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with monitors and consoles. On one of the screens, she saw an image of the desert outside. The creature was there, pacing in front of the door. Its movements were frantic, almost agitated, as though it were trying to find a way in. She watched, her heart pounding, as the creature finally stopped. It turned its head toward the camera, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, she thought it would charge the door again. But then it did something she didn't expect. It stepped back, disappearing into the darkness. She stared at the empty screen, her mind racing. Was it gone? Or was it waiting? The thought sent a chill down her spine, but she forced herself to focus. She wasn't safe here, not really. There were more of them. There would always be more. But she was alive. She had escaped. And somehow, against all odds, she would find her way home. As she turned away from the monitors, the faint hum of the facility followed her. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still hear the alien's voice. You must survive. She intended to. But she knew now that survival came with a price, and that price would haunt her forever.